I still remember the first time someone told me, trading? Man, that's just gambling with charts. I laughed it off, but deep down, it hit me hard. Because in that moment, I wasn't sure if they were wrong. Back then, I was just a kid with a laptop, a few $100s, and the dream of turning it into millions. I watched charts the way gamblers watch the roulette wheel, waiting for luck, praying for a miracle. Every green candle felt like victory. Every red one felt like betrayal. But after years in this game, I learned something no book ever told me. The line between trading and gambling is razor thin, and most people don't even realize when they've crossed it. If you think about it, both gamblers and traders risk money for uncertain outcomes. Both chase emotions, greed, fear, euphoria. Both can win big and lose everything. So what really separates a trader from a gambler? It's not the charts, it's not the broker, it's the mindset. You see, the casino doesn't care how smart you are. The odds are built against you. But in the market, the odds can be built for you if you know how to think like the house, not the player. In this story, I'll take you through the journey that changed how I see this game forever. From reckless trades to strategic warfare. From blind faith to data-driven conviction. Because yes, trading can be gambling, but it doesn't have to be. The difference lies in what's behind the click of your mouse, luck or discipline. When I first stepped into the markets, I wasn't chasing knowledge. I was chasing adrenaline. I remember those early days vividly, sitting in a dark room, two monitors glowing, charts moving like a heartbeat. I had just discovered Forex trading through a YouTube ad that promised financial freedom and exotic cars. The idea that I could make money from my phone was intoxicating. I opened my first account with $500, money I couldn't afford to lose, and dove headfirst into the charts. I didn't understand liquidity, order flow, or macroeconomics. What I understood was hope. Every time I won, I felt invincible. Every time I lost, I doubled down. I wasn't trading. I was gambling with confidence dressed up as analysis. There was this one night, I'll never forget it, when I turned $500 into $2,000 in just 3 days trading gold. I thought I had cracked the code. I told my friends I was going to quit my job. I even started planning the speech I'd give when I became financially free. And then, in a single morning, it was all gone. One impulsive trade, no stop loss, just greed and disbelief. I sat there staring at my screen, watching the red numbers sink into my soul. That day, I realized something important. I wasn't losing to the market. I was losing to myself. But instead of learning, I did what most beginners do. I blamed the broker, blamed the news, blamed manipulation. I was angry at the system, convinced that the market was rigged against retail traders like me. It took me years to understand that the market wasn't my enemy. My impulsiveness was, my need to be right, my fear of missing out, my obsession with quick wins. You see, in gambling, people chase the thrill of uncertainty. In trading, the amateurs do the same thing. They just hide it behind fancy indicators and telegram signals. But the truth? Most retail traders are gamblers wearing analyst masks. That realization was the beginning of my transformation. The moment I stopped asking, how can I win? And started asking, why do I lose? After that first account blew up, I promised myself I'd be smarter next time. I told myself it's just a learning curve. But what I didn't realize was that my biggest enemy wasn't the market, it was my own mind. I went through a cycle that every struggling trader knows too well. I'd deposit again, trade recklessly, win a few,
feel like a genius, and then lose it all. Each time, the pattern repeated, only the emotions got worse. The highs were higher, and the crashes were deeper. I remember one specific week in 2013. It still hurts to think about it. I had built my account up to $10,000 over several months, the biggest it had ever been. I was finally convinced I was on the right track. Then came non-farm payroll day, one of those high volatility events every trader both fears and craves. I went all in. No stop loss, no plan, just conviction. When the data hit, the market exploded in the opposite direction. My $10,000 evaporated in less than a minute. My hands were shaking, my heart was racing, I felt physically sick. That night, I sat alone in my apartment staring at my trading journal, though it was barely a journal, more like a graveyard of emotional trades. I realized something that hit me hard. I wasn't trading based on skill or data. I was trading based on revenge, fear, and ego. It was no different than the man at the poker table chasing his losses, convinced the next hand would make it all back. The truth is, the line between a trader and a gambler isn't about what they do. It's about why they do it. A gambler needs action. A trader needs clarity. A gambler bets to feel alive. A trader acts to manage risk. At that time, I didn't know any of this. I just knew I was tired. Tired of losing, tired of pretending I was in control. I remember saying out loud to myself, maybe I'm just not cut out for this. For a few months, I walked away from the charts completely. I avoided financial news, ignored trading groups, and focused on rebuilding my confidence. But even when I tried to quit, the market was still in the back of my mind, whispering like a siren song. There's something magnetic about trading. It's not just the money. It's the illusion of mastery. The belief that if you can just understand one more thing, you'll finally be in control. And that belief is what pulled me back in. But this time, I came back differently. I stopped chasing quick profits. I started reading books on behavioral finance, risk psychology, and probability theory. I studied poker players, chess masters, and even military strategists, people who understood the balance between emotion and logic. One quote from Warren Buffett became my anchor. The market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. It was then that I realized patience wasn't just a virtue in trading. It was the edge. That painful chapter became the foundation of everything I built afterward. I stopped trying to predict the market and started trying to understand myself. The turning point didn't come from a big win. It came from a realization that felt almost like defeat. I was in a small cafe one afternoon, scrolling through trading forums, watching other people post charts with massive profits. A post caught my eye, not because of the numbers, but because of what it said underneath. Trading is not about predicting the future. It's about managing uncertainty better than everyone else. That sentence hit me like a punch to the chest. I had been fighting the market like it was an opponent to beat. But the market doesn't fight you. It just exists. It was me fighting myself. I started to see that professional traders didn't approach the market like gamblers. They approached it like statisticians, scientists, and psychologists combined. They didn't try to win every trade. They tried to win the long game. So I went back to the basics. I stopped thinking of trades as bets. Instead, I started thinking in terms of risk per trade, expected value, and sample size. I treated my trading like a business. Every dollar risked was an employee.
and every trade had to justify its place in the company. Then I discovered something that changed everything: the power of probability and process. A gambler makes a decision and hopes the outcome favors them. A trader creates a system that ensures, over time, the probabilities must favor them. I remember running a small backtest on a simple moving average strategy. Nothing fancy, just a structure to test discipline. Over 100 trades, it wasn't about guessing where the price would go. It was about following the plan, even when it didn't feel right. And something magical happened. I realized my emotions were inversely correlated with my results. The more emotional I was, the worse I performed. The calmer I was, the more consistent my outcomes became. It wasn't about knowing where Bitcoin would go tomorrow or what the Fed would say next week. It was about consistency under certainty. That's when I built my 3R framework, something I still use today. R1, risk control. Never risk more than 1 to 2% per trade. R2, routine. Treat trading like a profession, not a hobby. R3, reflection. After every session, review not what the market did, but how I behaved. I also started journaling differently. Instead of just writing numbers and results, I recorded emotions. Was I anxious before a trade? Did I hesitate? Did I feel FOMO? That emotional awareness became my most powerful indicator. One night, I was reviewing a losing streak, 10 trades in a row, all small losses. Old me would have been furious. But this time, I noticed something strange. My account balance was barely down. My risk control had done its job. And for the first time in years, I felt peace after losing. That's when I smiled and said to myself, "You're not gambling anymore. You're trading." That moment didn't feel like fireworks. It felt quiet, steady, and deeply satisfying. It was the first time I truly felt in control, not of the market, but of myself. From that day on, my focus shifted completely. I no longer chased profits. I chased mastery. After that turning point, I realized something essential. Knowledge wasn't my problem anymore. Application was. I had read all the trading books, watched hundreds of videos, taken online courses from self-proclaimed gurus. But none of that mattered if I couldn't stay disciplined when it counted. So I made a decision. I would rebuild myself from the ground up, not as a gambler who trades, but as a professional operator of probability. The first step was education, but not the kind people think of. I stopped studying strategies and started studying market structure, institutional behavior, and psychology. That's when I discovered smart money concepts, the idea that markets move based on liquidity, not luck. It wasn't random candles dancing on the screen. It was engineered liquidity hunts designed to trap retail traders chasing breakout highs or panic selling into lows. It was the same feeling you get at a poker table when the dealer smiles, not because of your hand, but because he knows what's coming next. The market does the same thing. It invites you in, feeds your ego, then crushes you when you least expect it. But once you understand that, you stop reacting emotionally. You start anticipating. You start thinking like the people who move the market, not the ones who chase it. I remember spending months replaying old price data, watching how price manipulated liquidity before moving in the true direction. It was like watching a magic trick in reverse. Every time I uncovered a new trap, I could feel my old habits dying. That's when my trading results began to shift. Not because I found a holy grail, but because I stopped looking for one. I started trading setups that aligned with institutional logic. I identified liquidity pools, not support and resistance lines.
I watched how price reacted to imbalances, not just indicators. I used time, sessions, news events, and manipulation windows as my secret weapon. Every trade now had a reason beyond, "I think price will go up." It became a structured hypothesis. And yet the biggest evolution wasn't technical, it was psychological. I began to see trading as an inner mirror. Every weakness in my character showed up in my results. Impatience, revenge trades. Ego, oversized positions. Fear, missed opportunities. I realized I couldn't fix my trading without fixing myself. So I did the unthinkable. I took a break. A full month. No charts, no trades, no data. Just reflection. I journaled about my relationship with money, fear, control, and risk. I found that my desire to win wasn't about freedom. It was about validation. I wanted the market to prove I was good enough. Once I understood that, my entire approach transformed. Trading became meditation. Every chart was a lesson in patience. Every setup a test of humility. I didn't need to trade every day. I needed to wait for alignment. Slowly, consistency replaced chaos. My returns grew, yes, but more importantly, my confidence stabilized. I finally understood what people meant when they said, "Trading mastery isn't about predicting the market. It's about mastering yourself in the market." When I started mentoring younger traders, I noticed they all asked the same question. How do I know if I'm gambling or trading? My answer was simple. If you're trading to feel something, excitement, validation, revenge, you're gambling. If you're trading to execute a plan, to manage risk, and to learn from every outcome, you're building mastery. That's the truth I wish someone had told me 15 years ago.
There's a brutal truth that most traders never want to accept. The market needs losers to function. Without someone on the other side of your trade, there's no liquidity, no fuel for the machine. Every time you click buy or sell, someone bigger, faster, and better informed is taking the opposite side. And that's not cynicism, it's structure. When I finally understood this, everything about my perception of trading changed. You see, brokers, liquidity providers, and market makers aren't villains. They're part of the ecosystem. The problem is that most retail traders don't even know what game they're playing. They think they're competing against the market. In reality, they're competing against themselves, their impulses, biases, and lack of patience, while being quietly harvested for liquidity by smarter money. It's not personal, it's just business. That's when I realized why the industry is filled with noise, because confusion equals profit. Indicators, signals, magic strategies, all designed to keep you chasing something you'll never catch. The market doesn't reward the one who works hardest. It rewards the one who thinks clearly when everyone else is panicking. I remember this lesson hitting me hard during the COVID crash in 2020. Retail traders were euphoric one week, devastated the next. Everyone was screaming, "This time is different." But for the institutions, the smart money, it was just another cycle. They sold the top, bought the fear, and used the volatility to build long-term positions while the crowd was emotionally drained. The truth is, retail traders provide the energy for those moves. They create liquidity by placing stop losses in predictable areas. They generate momentum by chasing breakouts. They provide opportunity for professionals who understand the map beneath the chaos. That's why I stopped blaming the market. It wasn't designed to be fair. It was designed to transfer money from the impatient to the patient. But here's the paradox. Once you accept that, you regain control. Because instead of fighting the system, you learn to navigate it. I began to treat every market movement as a conversation between fear and greed. When the crowd panicked, I asked, "Who's buying this fear?" When everyone was euphoric, I asked, Who's quietly selling into this optimism? That simple shift turned me from prey into observer. It's not that I became emotionless. I just stopped believing my emotions were facts. And once you can detach like that, trading starts to look less like gambling and more like chess. Every move has purpose. Every loss becomes data. Every win becomes validation of a repeatable process. But the hard part, most traders don't want to hear this. They want shortcuts. They want signals. They want to feel in control in an environment that thrives on uncertainty. That's why so many people blow up accounts, not because they lack skill, but because they refuse to surrender their illusions. The truth is, trading isn't about finding certainty. It's about building resilience in uncertainty. Once you embrace that, you stop asking, will this trade win, and start asking, what's the worst that can happen, and can I survive it? Because survival, not prediction, is the real edge. And that realization leads directly to the next part of my journey, the evolution from mere survival to systematic mastery.
After years of chaos, I realized that the only way to win in the long run was to remove as many decisions as possible from my emotions. Trading had to become a system, not a feeling. So I did something most traders never do. I stopped trading for 3 months. I didn't open a single chart, didn't enter a single trade. Instead, I studied my past 200 trades line by line like a forensic detective analyzing evidence. I wasn't looking for the perfect setup. I was looking for patterns in my behavior. And what I found shocked me. 80% of my losses came not from bad strategy, but from emotional deviation, entering too early, adding to losers, taking profits too soon, revenge trading. The problem wasn't the market, it was me. So I built a structure designed to protect me from myself. I created what I call the 3 pillars system: process, probabilities, and psychology. 1. Process. Every trade had to follow a checklist. Before I clicked buy or sell, I needed at least 3 confirmations: market structure aligned with my bias, liquidity zones identified where stops are likely to cluster, and a clear invalidation point where I'd admit I was wrong. No exceptions, no gut feelings. 2. Probabilities. I stopped thinking in terms of right or wrong. Instead, I thought in terms of expected value. What's the outcome if I take this trade 100 times? If my edge produced positive results over a large sample, I didn't care about one loss. Trading became statistics, not emotion. 3. Psychology. This was the hardest part. I built rituals to manage my state: meditation before trading, journaling after. I tracked not just P&L, but emotions, fear, greed, boredom. When I noticed emotional spikes, I'd step away. No chart is worth your sanity. Over time, this system rewired how I approached markets. Trading stopped being about making money. It became about executing flawlessly, even if that meant taking small, consistent losses. Because I realized something profound. Consistency doesn't come from the market behaving predictably. It comes from you behaving predictably. And the results spoke for themselves. My win rate didn't skyrocket, but my drawdown shrank, my equity curve smoothed, and my confidence returned. For the first time, I wasn't chasing setups. I was letting the market come to me. The irony is, once I built the system to eliminate emotion, I rediscovered the joy of trading. Because when you have structure, you can play the game freely, without fear.
I remember the first time I hit 6 consecutive months of profitability. Not huge gains, but steady, repeatable results. That's when I realized trading mastery isn't about control. It's about surrender. You surrendered the need to be right. You surrender the fantasy of perfection. You surrender to the process. And that's when freedom begins. This system didn't make me invincible, but it made me unshakable. And that's the foundation for the next transformation, when trading stops being just a skill and becomes an identity.
There's a point in every trader's journey when the charts stop being about money. For me, that point came one quiet morning. The market was open, but I wasn't trading. I was just watching. Candles moved the same way they always did, but for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to jump in. No FOMO, no panic, just observation. That's when I realized I had changed. The market hadn't become easier. I had become calmer. What once triggered anxiety now triggered curiosity. Losing trades didn't sting the way they used to. Winning trades didn't give me a rush. I was no longer chasing dopamine. I was executing discipline. Trading had stopped being a battlefield. It became a mirror. Every decision reflected who I was inside, my patience, my fears, my ability to delay gratification. And when I looked into that mirror long enough, I started seeing something I hadn't seen in years: clarity. I started waking up earlier, not to check charts, but to meditate. I spent more time reading than reacting. My identity slowly shifted from a trader trying to make money to a professional managing risk. There's a profound difference between the two. When you trade for money, you're at the mercy of outcomes. When you trade for mastery, you're driven by process. The funny thing? The money follows mastery, never the other way around. This transformation wasn't just psychological, it was spiritual. Trading taught me humility. Markets don't owe you anything. It taught me resilience, the ability to lose and still show up. And it taught me self-awareness, the courage to see my own patterns without judgment. I used to think the market was my opponent. Now, I see it as my teacher. It's a teacher that doesn't use words, only consequences. And if you're humble enough to listen, it will show you everything you need to know about yourself. I remember telling a friend once, trading is 10% charts and 90% self-awareness. He laughed until he blew his account. That's when he understood. This transformation changed not just how I traded, but how I lived. I became more patient with people, more deliberate in my choices, more detached from things I couldn't control. Markets became meditation. Losses became lessons. Profits became proof of discipline. That's when I truly understood the difference between gambling and trading. Gamblers chase outcomes. Traders build systems. Gamblers need excitement. Traders seek consistency. Gamblers live in hope. Traders operate in probabilities. And the more I embodied that mindset, the more peaceful I became. There was no finish line anymore, just refinement. Every day was an opportunity to execute a little better, think a little clearer, detach a little more. That's the real transformation, when trading stops being something you do and becomes a reflection of who you are. Because when you master yourself, the market no longer controls you. You become unshakable, not because you never lose, but because no loss can define you anymore.
After 15 years in this game, I've learned one truth that overshadows every strategy, every setup, every market condition. Trading isn't about predicting, it's about preparing. That's the difference between a gambler and a trader. A gambler steps into the market hoping to win.
A trader steps in already knowing how much they can afford to lose. A gambler measures success by outcomes. A trader measures success by execution. A gambler needs to be right. A trader needs to be disciplined. The market rewards the second type, always. When you strip away all the indicators, all the theories, what's left is a simple but brutal equation. Your mindset determines your longevity. Anyone can make money in one lucky streak, but only those who manage risk, control emotion, and respect process can do it for years. That's why trading feels like a paradox. It looks like a financial pursuit, but it's actually a psychological one. It doesn't expose the market's randomness, it exposes your own. When you treat trading like gambling, the market becomes chaos, unpredictable, ruthless, unforgiving. But when you treat trading like a profession, that same chaos starts to show structure. You begin to see patterns, not in price, but in behavior. You realize that your edge isn't just in your charts, it's in your consistency. The lesson is simple. You cannot control the market, but you can always control yourself. And that's where real mastery begins. You stop asking, will this trade work? And start asking, did I execute my plan perfectly? You stop fearing losses because you understand they're just data. You stop chasing wins because you understand they're just outcomes. The only thing that matters is the next decision, and whether it's made with clarity or emotion. Most people never reach that level because they want shortcuts. They want to feel in control. But the irony is that the more you try to control the market, the more it punishes you. The moment you surrender control, that's when you start to see clearly. The market is like the ocean. You can't command the waves, but you can learn to surf them. And just like surfing, mastery doesn't come from fighting the tide. It comes from learning to flow with it. When I finally understood that, I stopped feeling the highs of wins and the lows of losses. I started feeling something better. Peace. That's the lesson I want every trader to learn. Trading isn't about making money fast. It's about staying in the game long enough to let your edge play out. It's not about being perfect. It's about being prepared. It's not about control. It's about consistency. Because in the end, markets will test your patience, your ego, your resilience, and they'll take everything from you if you let them. But if you learn to master yourself first, they'll give you everything you ever wanted: freedom, clarity, and confidence. That's the ultimate lesson.
If there's one truth I wish someone had told me 15 years ago, it's this. Trading will not make you free until you master yourself first. You can have the best setup, the cleanest charts, the most expensive course. But none of it matters if your mind isn't disciplined, your emotions aren't stable, and your process isn't consistent. The market doesn't care about your dreams. It doesn't care about how badly you want to win. It only responds to skill, patience, and control. That's why I built Staro Markets. Not to sell a fantasy of overnight wealth, but to tell the truth that most people don't want to hear. That trading is not about beating the market. It's about becoming someone who can survive it. Every video I create, every story I tell, comes from the same mission: to help traders move from chaos to clarity, from gambling to mastery, from chasing profits to building discipline. Because I've lived through both worlds: the reckless trader who blew accounts, and the disciplined professional who rebuilt from nothing. And here's what I've learned. When you stop trading to make money, that's when you finally start making money.
When you stop reacting to every tick and start trusting your system, you shift from panic to presence. When you stop seeking control and start embracing uncertainty, the market finally stops feeling like an enemy and starts becoming your mirror. That's the journey every real trader must walk. And it's not easy, but it's worth it. Because one day, if you stay in the process long enough, you'll wake up and realize you're no longer gambling. You're growing. You're no longer reacting. You're observing. You're no longer desperate. You're deliberate. And that's when trading becomes what it was always meant to be. Not a bet, but a craft. Not a chase for money, but a path to mastery. So, if this message resonates with you, if you felt the fear, the losses, the frustration, and the quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, there's a better way, then you're in the right place. This is Starro Markets, where we don't sell dreams, we build discipline. Where we don't chase the market, we master ourselves. Because at the end of the day, that's the only edge that never fades. Master yourself, master the markets.